really started somewhere in last October in China. The structure of the virus, which we all, of course, cannot see, but visualize in the pictures is as shown, which is a crown-shaped virus, and that is how it is corona. His brothers have been troubling us since last few years, and this family of coronavirus also can cause some simple diseases like some cold infections and all those things. The more severe was SARS and MERS, which you must have heard about. They actually knocked our door, but they went off without causing much trouble. Of course, there was a huge scare, and there have been mortalities and morbidities because of this SARS and MERS, but they didn't really cause the pandemic. Can we go to the next slide, please? Having said, the brother of this SARS and MERS, which now is known as COVID-19, originated from Wuhan, China, and was officially reported in December, but must be in circulation since last October. WHO declared a pandemic on January, and by February, of course, it was baptized as coronavirus disease and COVID-19 by WHO. Can we go to the next one? You can see that the pandemic has spread all across the globe. The dots are everywhere. Maybe some part of Russians, which you will not see, and some part of South Australia and New Zealand. Of course, there are diseases, but the density of infection is quite concentrated in North America, the South America, the Indian subcontinent, and obviously the Europe and Southeast Asia. Can we go to the next one? I don't want to tell you, but till yesterday there have been more than million deaths, and so it is quite a scary pandemic, which we can say. And the important thing to note is, yes, there is a pandemic, and what have we learned from the history? Did we know that some pandemic-like thing is coming? And should we be prepared? Were we prepared? Was there any opportunity which was knocking at us, but we didn't look at it? All those things we will try and look into it. Next slide, please. I remember I was a participant in some discussion in 2007, 2009 in WHO, where these epidemiologists, then flu scientists, then economists, including the people representing World Bank, some commercial organization, and obviously disease modeling people, they came across. There were a series of meetings in 2007 and 8, and WHO did discuss about eventuality of any pandemic and how should countries and individuals and societies be prepared for it. I remember a tagline at the end of the meeting that everybody unanimously agreed that it is not the question as to if there will be a pandemic, the only question is when it will be. And for a very long time, I mean, can we go to the next slide? Having said this thing, there were earlier warning. I mean, 2007, 2008 came into existence, this discussion, because of the fear of avian flu, which was caused by H5N1. So, I mean, everybody did understand that there will be a pandemic, and most of us were looking at flu as the probable pandemic. And if you see, there was a hint of this pandemic in form of H1N1, which our city obviously was recognized notoriously as a hub for this disease, and but it didn't flare up to the extent that the present pandemic is. There was also SARS and MERS, as I told you, but it didn't strike us to the extent that this corona struck us so badly. Next slide, please. Why India? I mean, almost all countries were unprepared. We must confess that we ignored the seriousness of what WHO was trying to tell us since last 12 years, that there will be huge impact of such pandemic. They also discussed travel bans and then economical losses, social impact, mental impact. All those things, issues were discussed, but to be very frank, all countries, including the developed one, forgot or didn't give much weightage. Nobody really understood or nobody gave real importance to the discussion that about the pandemic, and many of our countries treated it as a less priority. And of course, we are reaping the fruit of our ignorance, and so is the world. We know all those things. I mean, we are now looking at the healthcare capacities, economic losses, social issues, migration of labors, mental impact, and all those things. We are really living through pandemic, and practically everybody in the audience, we are to an extent aware of all those impacts that I am trying to depict here. Can we go to the next one? So, what is the solution? I mean, we agree that we ignored it. So be it. So what are the solutions? You know, most of the solutions, you have treatments like antivirals, some undefined antivirals like hydrochloroquine, remdesivir, favipiravir, tocilizumab, plasma, hospitalization. And you know, there have been shortages of oxygen, ventilator. I mean, obviously, there is a proportion of preparedness for any country for treating any disease. And if you get 100-fold more patients than at a time than what is expected to be, then the entire framework or entire facilities which we have created, keeping in some number in mind, they collapse. And so that is what has happened. And slowly, in some part we are recovering. Slowly, we still are, not able to recover. There are, of course, treatments like vitamin C, zinc, and D3. Those are the things which are some solution for people who are not infected but who want to maintain some healthy practices. So they will consume vitamin C, zinc, D3, etc. The next one, I mean, this cannot go on. I mean, you cannot wait till you are lying on the bed in the hospital. We need to have something more concrete, and that obviously comes from vaccine. The development of vaccine, we go to the next slide, please. I must tell you here, being in this field for a very long time, in my lifetime, this has never been the case that somebody asks you to develop a vaccine within a span of an year or so. Yes, but the impact is such a huge impact that everybody wants the things yesterday. And we know for sure that you cannot develop a perfectly ideal solution in such a short span of time. Besides this, I mean, besides the scientific risk, there are risks involved in investment. Now, take example of what we are doing. We are investing into a technology which is still going through phase 3, and we hope that it will be successful. If we normally wait till the phase 3 results are available and then start manufacturing, it would take 1 or more year for even a small quantity to be made available to the market. So everybody wants the vaccine as soon as clinical trial is successful. Now we have to take a calculated risk, or so a sweet name is scientific judgment, on the data available about the non-clinical performance of this vaccine. And because of government pressure, social pressure, pressures from peers, family members that you are working in vaccine industry and when the vaccine will come. This has been the question all through our life since last 6 months. All of this culminated into we taking a so-called risk that, okay, we will start manufacturing. We will invest huge amount of money and hope that our best judgment based on our scientific knowledge and the information around will fructify and we will have the vaccine. This doesn't, the saga doesn't end here. I mean, even if we produce 100 million doses, can you imagine that to distribute it to 10 crore people or 20 crore people as early as possible, what load it will have on supply chain management? I mean, we can have some 10 crore doses in our cold room, but to reach it to, say, areas like Chandrapur, Vidarbha, or some areas in MP, or as far as Mizoram, Assam, how do we manage these supply chain issues? I mean, you need to have transports, you need to have labor, you need to have storage capacity, and then further distribution and the chain of people who will be doing this activity, not only the dispatches of the product, but then undertaking actual vaccination, going through the wadis and the cities and then small towns and gather people, give the vaccine, keep record, and look at the reactions if at all they are, for eventually looking at the effect of this. That question having been not answered completely, 10 crore doses, obviously for a population of 130 crore, you need to prioritize. I mean, of course, it is a bad situation that you will be in, but you need to prioritize who will get the vaccine. And for that, the government bodies will have to take some drastic decision, and obviously they would take it. But this decision is very easy to say, but it will be very difficult when it comes in the reality of the life. So all these things culminate into a lot of issues. I mean, I'm just trying to give you an example that we have 7.5 billion people on the globe, and if a vaccine, most of them are 2 doses scheduled, you would require 15 billion doses. Can you imagine this staggering figure that theoretically you want to vaccinate? Forget 15 billion, at least 10 billion people, 10 billion doses to be distributed in nook and corner of the world is going to create huge impact, immense pressure in producing, not only producing, but distributing and then making use of it. So it is going to, even if the vaccine is available, it is going to create a lot of pressure in producing, distributing, using it, and it would obviously it will cause extraordinary impact on the job, businesses and other economic activities, because this is going to be over a period of 2 and 3 years. So what do we do? I mean, those people who are not going to get the vaccine, they will be in the non-priority section. The disease will continue. It's not going to stop. And so there will be a huge impact, not only what we are seeing it today, but maybe even after availability of vaccine on businesses, continuation of businesses and jobs and related things. Can we go to the next one? So what have we learned? I mean, considering the history of pandemic and its global impact, we need to learn from the present epidemic. Unfortunately, till the time vaccine is available, we have to work around on an effective alternative. And this is what I would like to, put my thought over here. As I described to you the disease, I described to you the treatment, therapeutic, and I described to you solutions like vaccine. But reality of life is it's going to take time. And secondly, which I am not going to put it in slide, but I need to say, unfortunately, this is not the only pandemic. I mean, the world is likely to face such situation, maybe at a smaller scale, maybe of the same scale in future and days to come. You must have read today's newspaper, some Chinese cat CQV virus, and then in last month there was CDC warning about some G4 influenza knocking our door, which has a pandemic potential. All these agencies will do their job very diligently for alerting us. But we as common citizen, what do we take it as alert? I mean, suppose if CDC tells me, be aware, pandemic flu is coming again, what do I do? I mean, the organizations which are supposed to take care of this thing, including ourselves and the government agency, what do they do? So it's not going to be the first time in our life that such pandemics are likely to come. So we need to think that there will be some therapeutic aspect of treating such disease, and there will be an aspect where you will have vaccine, but there will be a significant amount of time which lies between the development of vaccine and its use of vaccine. And that is where we need to consider, is there anything that we can have as an alternative, effective alternative? Next slide, please. Is there an alternative approach? Theoretically, yes. Is it done correctly or is it available today? Yes and no. I mean, you have something and you don't have something which is in more organized fashion. So to deal with an alternative, we need to learn something called as the defense mechanism. I mean, ultimately, we need to save our lives and so are the lives of our near and dears. Can we go to the next one? To look at the alternative, this slide is little more technical and complicated, but the slide shows that, take example of SARS virus on the left hand side, it enters through your nose, pharynx, and it goes to the lungs. Once it goes to the lungs, your body has to defend it. So the body starts defending right from it enters, the virus enters through nasopharyngeal cavity, and it goes on struggling till it reaches the lung. Leave aside the right hand side and the jugular. But the important thing which I need to explain to you on this slide is there is some word called interferon, IFN. And then there are some words like TH1, TH17, pro-inflammatory, cytokines, antibodies. Leave aside this complicated terminology. What I mean is the body, the designer of this body, I mean, human body is one of the most complicated things that we have ever seen. So it's the most complex thing to deal with. What it means is it has tremendous options of defending itself. It has taken cognizance that there will be viruses, there will be bacteria, they will continuously attack. It will be a war of survival between the disease causing agent and the survival. I mean, between human being and the viruses. So the viruses will try and modify themselves to survive and perpetuate, and human beings have to take care using their intelligence how to combat all those things. So in this picture, when the virus goes through the nose and it reaches lung, there are several things which can defend, which can try and stop this activity. And the first line of defense, which is called innate immunity. There are two kinds of immunity or resistance offered by the body. The first line of defense is called innate, and the second line of immunity is called as adaptive immunity. Can we go to the next one? Yes, this is innate and adaptive. We'll go to the next one. Again, don't go into the jargons of, I'll tell you what it is. There is one kind of response that the body gives which is independent of any specific response. I mean, just to narrate to you, the viruses are RNA or DNA, and the bacteria also contains something like RNA and DNA. Your body has a very sensitive system that it recognizes an entry of a new RNA, new DNA, new microorganism, and there are sensors which can sense this pattern recognition receptor. This PRR means pattern recognition receptor. Just like if we sit in a hall and we all are dressed uniformly, and if some person comes in the hall with some abnormal or different kind of dress, you will immediately identify because you know what is the basic code in that hall and what is the new entrant. So it's a kind of recognition that something new has come, and the body immediately triggers chain of events that something new has come, and so it starts defending itself. One of the defense that it first produces a protein which is antiviral, and that is called interferon. So the first line of defense comes from generation of interferon. Then there are several types of responses that the body generates, because the virus is obviously trying to grow at the cost of your cells. So the body has mechanism that it will try and destroy their own cells which are infected. Then there is some mechanism called apoptosis, where the cells, the human cells themselves decide that we are getting infected, so we must commit suicide. And they commit suicide, which is called as apoptosis. So the body tries to attack the incoming attack by actually gulping it, then committing suicide by the infected cells, or naturally killing those cells. This kind of response is more generic response. I mean, it doesn't recognize whether it is a flu virus, whether it is a measles virus, or whether it is COVID virus. So it generates a kind of reaction or a response where it tries to stop the further progression of this virus. And this is like, I can tell you that for defending our borders, we have two issues. We have border security force and you have army. The army doesn't patrol the border. Border security force have the duty, these forces have the duty to defend your border, and when it exceeds more than their capacity, then obviously the army is prepared. And the signals that come from border security force to army, that elaborates that what kind of enemy is there, how do you tackle and all those things. So the body also, the innate response not only tries to clear the infection at the site, but it also provides a software or a images or information to the next level of the resistance called the adaptive immunity, which is in the form of antibody. Now everybody knows we have antibodies, and antibodies can actually neutralize the incoming infection. If we can stop the infection right at the first place, then obviously you don't have to involve some specific response like antibody. But many times it happens that by the time your body takes care of this infection, some viruses, some bacteria will break your resistance and enter into your body. Now once it enters into your body, means internally body, or becomes bloodborne, then you need to have some specific resistance against it, and that is antibody. The vaccine essentially does this thing, that it will produce antibody. Hello?
Go on. Please go on, sir.
Okay. So the antibody is a kind of specific resistance. I mean, it will recognize the host pathogen in a particular imagery, and it will produce the antibody which will recognize this image when it comes to future attack. And so it will keep a memory of that photo, as well as it will generate an anamnestic response. When the similar kind of image comes to it, it will start producing antibodies to a high level. And this is what exactly the vaccine is supposed to do. But as I told you, the vaccine cannot be prepared in a month or two or even 6 months. It would take years, and it would take really years to understand the benefits and the reactions coming out of it. So the gap between, the pandemic is coming, the gap between the vaccine is available to the global population. We need to look at how best we can have the first line of defense correctly placed in our body. Can we go to the next one? Yeah, this is what I described to you, antibodies. Go to the next one. Again, it's a very complicated slide, but I tried to narrate to you that the first line of defense is innate mechanism. Can we go to the next one? It is expected that a vaccine will generate both antibody and memory. Next one, please. Yes, as I said, there will be possibility, very unfortunately, but there will be some infection, some epidemic, flu, SARS, MARS, or some brothers and sisters of these things. This is how nature has designed the perpetuation of everybody's life. So everybody should be able to defend themselves in a best possible way. So is it prudent to depend on vaccine only? As I told you, you need to, think of something else. Is there an alternative to raise our general defense, which I explained to you just now? Can we go to the next one? This is something new. Because of this COVID, this topic which was discussed earlier, maybe 10 years back, but it went to a sort of backside shelf, because nobody really bothered to look at it so cleanly. And now, because of this COVID and some data coming out, not a very clean scientific clinical trial based data, but still a retrospective data tells us that the recent in making immune system prepared for any attack is gathering lot of attention. The information available in use of BCG, MREs, measles, rubella, OP vaccine to generate kind of readiness for any infection is being talked about. It is believed that these vaccinations could generate what is called a trained immunity. As I told you, if your immunity is trained, if it is well prepared for all the events that I said about innate immunity, right from sensing the pathogen to processing the pathogen, to generate suicidal tendency into those infected cells, to generate a system which will kill your infected cells, and still provide a correct imagery for the adaptive immunity, then I think we should be able to sustain the onslaught of any such new infection. And this is in general called the trained immunity. Can we go to the next one? So can we have more understanding about innate or trained immunity? For several years, innate immunity has never been looked upon seriously. The innate immunity itself is an extremely complex phenomenon. What I said to you is only a tip of iceberg. I mean, there are hundreds of such mechanisms by which the body tries to defend itself using the innate immunity before it goes to the adaptive immunity. Although significant clarity is being brought into, it would take considerably high time to completely understand as to how the body prepares, so it depends. Therefore, simple thing is be very close to the normal human physiology. What I'm trying to tell here is, if you want your interferon production, your pattern recognition system, your apoptosis phenomena, your natural killer cells quite correctly placed, then your TLR response, all those responses which body differentiates between self and non-self and tries to defend it right in the beginning, they should be in very close tandem. Now, there is no such therapy available that if I take a tablet A, it will make me very strong for producing interferon. If I take some other tablet, it will make me very strong for keeping the pattern recognition system in place, or so many other things which I described in innate immunity. So it is usually understood that the designer of this system has presumed some condition under which the body will remain in its prepared manner. And till the time we really understand this complex science, or we have some answers to how best we can boost it, the best thing is to be very close to the normal human physiology. Come to the next one. How do we bring in normalcy? You need to have physical, mental, neurological normalcy are essential factors to keep the body in a completely balanced state. This would mean that the body can keep itself fully prepared for any external attack. I'm just trying to give you an example that what a stress, which is a mental phenomena, and very often it is neglected, and unknowingly or unnecessarily we take stress from several factors in our life, and that creates something like type 2 diabetes, which is known, hypertension, mental disorder. Now, when you treat such disorders, or when you are undergoing through such diseases or abnormalities, you need to understand the entire body mechanism is an integrated system. So you cannot say that I have a very muscular body, but my mental condition is not good. That will not culminate into you being prepared for any such attack which normally the body would be able to. So we need to look at the integrated system and not one system that you take some medication, you try and make some cardiac exercise, or you develop some muscle, or you just do some mental exercises and eliminate physical. That cannot be the solution. I mean, it's a very thinly but perfectly balanced system in human body. So your body, mind, and the entire system needs to be in perfectly more or less normal condition. And that is what I mean by normalcy. Then do we have something to do? Can we go to the next one? So to come to normalcy, you need to redefine a life cycle. I mean, as I told you, you just cannot have some physical exercise and be prepared for this thing. And if you have an integrated plan of maintaining yourself, then you need to redefine the life cycle. And it includes right from diet control, appropriate exercise, and particularly in the Indian context, I must say, I mean, I have gone through several exercises that people are doing, and you are seeing it's nowadays a fashion to go to the gym. We consider one type of exercise and we expect that it will keep us healthy. And that exactly is the thing where we go wrong. And particularly in our context, the yogic way of dealing with physical and mental health needs to be revoked at immediately. I mean, now I've seen people started asking to us, can we do basilikas? Can we do some breathing exercise? Can we run for a kilometer? I mean, you cannot overnight do all those things, but necessary that this has given us opportunity to look at within ourselves. Do we have some system? Whether our ancestors have thought about this system when vaccines and therapies were not available? How were we defending ourselves? How do the animals they defend themselves? And then the answer is you need to be very closer to the nature, and with the type of lifestyle that we are having, we just cannot forget that we have to do jobs, we have to earn money, maintain our social status, maintain our family. So by doing all those things, you need to maintain yourself, and for this, in my opinion, to keep a balance between your mind and body is best way comes from the yogic way of doing this thing. And particularly in this yogic way, unfortunately, mistakenly, somewhere now yoga is also considered to be an acrobatic exercise, more of physical exercise, which is not the perfect understanding of yogic thing. I mean, an equal importance in yogic exercise is given to mental balance. This mental balance is not just for that you feel good for 15-20 minutes, but while you are doing it, you are trying to bring in the normalcy into the entire system and keep a balance between your mental well-being and the physical well-being. One of the exercise that has been becoming very popular during this is pranayama. Of course, one needs to learn it correctly from correct people, but this knowledge was available to us and we just ignored. And now when we hear terms like trained immunity and innate immunity, we restart our thinking that, oh, body has given us so many opportunities to deal with such thing, and we just failed to understand it, or we ignored it. And that is what I am trying to put into. So pranayama will be the best technique to bring in synchronization of body and mind. This is what I am trying to put forward. Next way. Now there are classes, there are agencies which are doing, but if we have to do this thing as a mission of our country, we can have hospitals, we can have medical colleges, universities, registered private organizations. They can be encouraged to conduct camp for imparting training in yoga-related health issue. I mean, instead of treating diseases, if we can have wellness camp, if we can have education about wellness and not exactly treating the disease, then the concept which we had for a long time with us can be given a sort of recognition, as you have hundreds of such institutes which can be availed by normal people. Not that I have hypertension, so I go and make pranayama, nor that I am suffering from type 2 diabetes and I will look at the impact of pranayama. It should not be like this. It should be popularized light in the universities, in the colleges, in the schools, maybe attached to the hospitals, medical colleges. This could bring in a very large population into a more healthy and ready to face infections which are likely to come, unfortunately. Can we go to the next one? This can also be linked to a commercialization. It is a significant, valuable commercial activities like medical tourism. I mean, I know many Indian Americans, they come here for dental treatment, for ophthalmological issues, because you get the same quality of treatment here, but at a very cheap price. If we make the wellness center or yogic way of defining lifestyle into a commercially linked activity, then you of course have the tradition built in your culture. You have the knowledge centers, and if this can be converted into a sort of hub where many people who come for tourism for a normal reason can also have a very short courses of wellness, teaching them in yoga and controlling all those normalcy related things, and they can come eventually, new people can join, the tourist can come to tourist destination where such camps can be organized. But then it would be our country specific, that the knowledge that we have at our doorstep. We can make use of it to deal with the calamities like what we are facing it today. So countries outside India also can be attracted, and this can roll out a good commercialization activity as well. As a country, we have tremendous knowledge of several medicinal preparation, both as therapeutic and immunity boosters. Can we go to that everybody knows. Need to create a model for assessment of all these preparation using modern scientific tools. I mean, everybody wants double-blind randomized control trial. Since many of our ancient therapies, they deal with individual and their treatment and not a mass scale treatment like crocin for everybody or azithromycin for all infection. I don't think that exactly is the way of dealing with the thing. It's a more or less personalized medicine. So when you try and prove something, it could be a different way of understanding clinical trial and presenting the data. That also needs to be generated in a way that it can be aligned with the concept of modern science, and people can get convinced using different tools but aligning with the type of knowledge that we usually get out of randomized clinical trial and controls. Can we go to the next one? Because of working of these medicines may be different than presently available option, a different design of clinical trial need to be considered. That's what I said. Can we go to the next one? Now, where from the money will come? Universities, medical colleges be funded through government agencies, or for that matter, it can be CSR. I mean, why should CSR be only for treating diseased people? It can be for wellness also. We can generate lot of intellectual property rights by, understanding our own medicinal plants or some specific exercise and their treatment. You can generate IPs in universities, colleges, and obviously you can in-license that. I mean, these are all offshoot which I could think of. You can make a royalty arrangement, the licenses can be given. So universities, hospitals can stand on their own leg, and then this activity can be rolled out as a commercial success as well. As the world has picked up Namaskar to shake hand, certainly this approach will be seriously looked at by many. Namaskar, salute to the pandemic warriors. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. We have, with your permission, we have time for a few questions. Naresh, sir?
Yes, please go ahead.
So, okay, on a general note, a few people would be asking a question about the vaccine. Those who have gone through the ordeal of infection of corona, COVID-19, can they be also administered the vaccine later?
I'll tell you, the present clinical trial is done on people who are negative to corona. I mean, those who have not infected with corona. But when the vaccine will be rolled out in the common people, I mean, nobody is going to test whether you had corona or you don't have corona. The present data, which is based on the non-clinical data, that even if you have suffered from corona and you get this vaccine, still it should not theoretically pose any danger to you. So you can avail the vaccine. The data will come out obviously as the vaccine goes into a larger use. But at present, the data based on the non-clinical thing, where the animals were injected and then subsequently challenged, they didn't show any advancement of the disease. So yes, theoretically you can use that thing.
Yes, sir. Also, the common people get confused by the different variants of the vaccines, of the different methodologies of the vaccines, and all through our childhood and sort of closer to the adulthood, we have had, most of us have had various doses of various vaccines, including the triple doses, booster doses, and whatnot. So, the people get confused when they hear about vaccines, particularly the corona-related vaccine. Different trials, different companies, different sets of people, different organizations working on different methodologies. So, can you throw some light on that? Whether oral will be better, whether the injectable will be better, whether the liquid form will be better, whether tablet form will be better. in terms of Indian conditions. Let's put it this way.
Okay. Of course, the presently available vaccine, they use different platform, but the use practically many of them use the same one. For example, in Indian context, the Oxford trial which we are running is an injectable vaccine and a two-dose vaccine. The other vaccine which will be coming is Novavax vaccine. This is a different platform. I mean, it has to generate the same response, but the platform of manufacturing is different. But this is also an injectable vaccine. You must have seen in America, they are trying to have a trial on Moderna vaccine, which is an mRNA vaccine. Again, it is an injection route. In India also, Bharat Biotech, Cadila, both are working on some, one in inactivated vaccine, the other one is also RNA vaccine. These vaccines are also injectable. There will be a vaccine which we are working, which will be exclusively intranasal. That we are trying to attempt a single dose intranasal vaccine, just like if you recall the flu vaccine which we floated in 2010 and 11, I think. So that vaccine is a different kind of platform for manufacturing, but the delivery is intranasal. There is no tablet, no oral vaccine available. So we have only two options: injections or intranasal. And all of them, any technology be used for manufacturing vaccine, the effect that is going to be achieved or expected to be achieved is same. Intranasal, in my opinion, will generate more memory at the site of infection, but the injection also can generate a memory in your body for eventual attack. We need to, decipher this more once the trials are over or the vaccine is used at a larger scale. But these are the two platforms only. No need to confusion. So presently available all injections, maybe in future one nasal.
Another question from my side, and then I will open for others. We are the closest comparison that the pandemic that we resemble today is the SARS or the H1N1 about a decade ago. And at that time, people like me were beneficiaries of the vaccine developed by Serum. And it was thought at that time that a single dose is immunizing you plus 4 or 5 people around you. And then also it is supposed to give you the immunity at least for a year, but at least could be for a longer period. So considering the present scenario, what kind of thing we are looking at for the vaccines which are being developed? Let's say from the Serum platform or the contract manufacturing that Serum will be doing it.
Okay. Again, I need to go a little bit in the explanation mode. The flu vaccine is a completely different story because God has given flu a unique ability that it changes its outer cover very frequently. So if I give you one flu vaccine today, the next year new flu vaccine will completely be a different outside shell. So even if you have antibody which will last lifelong to you, it doesn't recognize the new virus coming because it has disguised itself into a changing of its outer shell, and that is why you require flu every season, something new. So the vaccine will do its job by creating antibody, but if the infective agent changes, then the immunity doesn't last. I mean, even if you have antibody, it's of not much use. In the present context, the coronavirus, is again a very new infant, and so I need to be very cautious in saying. Of late, we are learning that the virus is changing. I hope that it doesn't change to the extent like flu. So the presently available vaccines should work till a considerable amount of mutations are gathered in the present virus. So the vaccines that we are discussing should give you at least a year or two, at least. If the virus doesn't change, then it is a lifelong. If the virus changes, then at least it would take a year or two for the virus to change. These are all predictions, and please take it with pinch of salt. If the speed of the virus change is very fast, then we need to have some more vaccines or something in addition. but at present it seems that the rate of change is not so significant. Again, I don't want to put my neck on the guillotine. If it doesn't change, then well, we are okay with the present vaccine set. If it changes, then we need to reconsider.
Great. If anyone has a few questions, they can put it in the chat box so that Dr. can answer. We can take them first 2 or 3 of them. Okay, since no one has. Just one holistic question while all the people, the panelists are also able to join. We're just trying to figure out how the younger generation could look at vaccinology or as a career or as an interesting option to look at in their life. Also, in the era of technology today, I think a lot of the development cycle of the vaccines, as in the case of pharmacy, also medicine, also is dependent on technology and the data analyzed through the analytics platform and so on and so forth. So, can you throw some light on that, these 2 aspects?
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic has created absolutely immense awareness about the biotechnology as a sector as well as vaccine as a specific sector. I think there will be a lot of opportunities for people to join in this particular platform. I mean, may it be microbiologists, biotechnologists, or pharmacists. So they have a lot of opportunities in days to come because now the awareness about the vaccines in general and particularly this vaccine is growing. So to that extent, immunology, virology, manufacturing, even biotechnology, bioengineering will be obviously areas where you would require a lot of human resource. So that would be my message. Surely people should get that into the career. More or less what is happening is now the software industry has put a lot of development into controlling many of facets of manufacturing. Not only the hardware of it control, but the data, the analytics, and the software related to analytical methods, data presentation, statistical calculations, all those things is mediated through software. So a software opportunity linked to biology or biotechnology, and along with that medicine, more or less personalized medicine, those will be the branches that will attract a lot of attention, and there will be a lot of career opportunities from that side, I feel.